All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Red Delta Project podcast. My name is Matt Schifferly, and here we're discussing a very special treat today. Here we got the School of Calisthenics. I got Jacko, and I've got Tim, head of one of the biggest calisthenics organizations in the world. I've been following these guys for years. Their podcast is fantastic. Their programs, everything about this is about helping you define basically a new possible for you guys, as you say, like what is a higher level of achievement. So thank you guys so much for coming on to the podcast today. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, great, Matt. That is the best intro we've ever had.
We both looked at each other and laughed because one of the biggest organizations. I mean, I guess when people, it's just interesting for me and Tim because we started doing calisthenics just for our own. We can talk a little bit as to why, but just generally like for our own amusement, really. We never expected to start the School of Calisthenics. And so I guess and we get lost a little bit sometimes in the mix of it. You forget how far it's come, but it's literally come from two guys messing about in the gym. That's how it started for us. And then, all of a sudden, I guess we're about coming up to 4 years in terms of the School of Calisthenics as a brand and as a business. And it's come a long way.
Fantastic. Now you've got 4 years for School of Calisthenics, but you have way more than 4 years of experience. You look at the team that you've assembled and the experience that you bring to the table, and it's just world class, I guess, is the best way to state it. So what is your personal background? I know rugby and so on. What have you guys done before calisthenics training?
So I grew up playing sport, rugby from a young age, sort of 9-10 years old. But to what's sort of contributed to where we are now is probably how young I started coaching. I was captain of my rugby team, age sort of 13, I think 12, 13. And the first task was to start leading warm-ups. And that was a start of like a coaching career, I guess. And that sort of progressed through coaching different sports and being involved in multi-sports while I was growing up. And then I was a professional scuba diving instructor for 3 years, which teaches you a lot about coaching because people are putting their lives in your hands and they don't want to die. So you got to get quite good at sort of being clear on your instructions when you can't talk and that sort of thing. But I then retrained
as a wife during that period.
I got a wife while I was away, yeah.
Scuba-ing.
Yeah, which is, if anyone's looking for a wife, being a scuba diving instructor is definitely an advantage. And then, I retrained as a strength and conditioning coach. I finished my qualifications in 2008 and then started to specialize in Paralympic sport. I've worked with athletes from over 30 different sports. So the last sort of 11, 12 years of my life has been focused on athletic performance from that perspective. And then we sort of, as I say, Jacko said, we fell into calisthenics about 5-6 years ago, I think, something like that. As something I originally started because I wanted to try and stabilize a recurrent dislocating shoulder. So I decided if I could learn to handstand, that would be a positive thing. That would show me that I had some control, and also look for a different type of training that I could use with the athletes that I was working with at the time. So I guess the experience that we bring to the table is not just our own practice of calisthenics, but years of coaching. And trying our best to become as good as we can be in that craft.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting because a lot of times when it comes to programs like yours, a lot of folks talk about what was your athletic background, but what makes you guys so strong is you have a very strong coaching background, because being able to do something is one thing, but being able to convey it and coach it, especially through the internet these days, you have programs online, you've got in-person programs, you've got videos and stuff. It's so hard to be able to actually help people effectively over distance, but your coaching experience shows through in those products, which is why they're so potent and valuable for helping people actually learn this stuff rather than just watching someone doing it and then trying to imitate it.
Yeah, I think we've always prided ourselves, I guess, on being coaches. Ultimately, that's what we are. I've joined Tim on the sort of S&C strength and conditioning coaching 6 years ago when I finished a professional rugby career. I played rugby professionally for 12, 13 years. So I had that sort of background, and then transitioned into strength and conditioning done the whole Paralympic thing alongside of Tim initially with another business that we had, and then have transitioned through sort of under the stewardship of Tim as a sort of mentor from a strength and conditioning and coaching perspective. And I've as well done rugby coaching, and for us, there's two sides to it. Like there's the coaching side of it. Like, can you coach? I don't really actually not necessarily care, but if we're looking at like a new coach coming on board, we're interested in, can you coach? Not necessarily first of all the topic, like what is your ability like to get the person in front of you to understand what you're trying to get across to them, and then can you actually make a change with them? Can you improve them, whatever that may be? Then we look at, rather than just looking at it like it's calisthenics, we look at movement, and we look at movement and strength, and just we apply what we understand through movement and strength as strength and conditioning coaches, and the science and rationale that goes into that, and we just apply it to the modality of calisthenics. So Tim said he's coached at 30 different sports, so it's about coaching movement, not just coaching like the one thing.
I think to your point, Matt, as well, that was our initial experience when we started to try and get into calisthenics. Was we went online and we were trying to find tutorials of how to do some of the stuff that we wanted to learn, and what we were faced with was somebody sort of going, well, just in a park going, well, this is how you do a human flag, and they just did one, and then we're like, well, I don't know how to do it. I know you can, but I don't now know. So because we've done a lot of work in Paralympic sport, we were used to sort of breaking down a less than sort of like textbook situation, if you like. So we might have an athlete who's missing a leg or an arm, and Jacko and I were coming into calisthenics both with shoulder history, injuries. So we had to boil it down to its composite parts and go, well, what do you actually need to do a human flag? And then how do we create the exercises which are going to allow somebody to piece that all together? And that was exactly our experience of, like, we just couldn't find the quality of coaching that we needed, and we kind of fell into then just sharing what we were learning and our coaching experience with other people when they sort of saw that we were getting half decent at some of this stuff, and they're like, oh, can you guys teach me? And that's where we began.
Yeah, and we've stayed quite passionate about that side of it, that a lot of our community and our followers and the people that are using our training programs and in the virtual classroom are similar to us. They don't have a gymnastics background. They've done other sports, or they've done nothing before, or they've got loads of injuries from lifting weights, or we all come into this carrying a lot of baggage. Tim, despite his young looks, is coming up to 40 soon next year, and I'm 37 at the moment, 38 next year, and we've come with a load of training history of different sports, in terms of us being able to do it, or do what we do, and a load of injuries along with that. And when we first tried to do a handstand, it looked awful. When we first tried to do a human flag, Tim said, mate, he didn't just say this feels impossible. He said, mate, this is where I used to dislocate my shoulder. This, overhead, the bottom arm that's supposed to be anchoring down, overhead, externally rotated. He was like, this is where it normally pops out. Now, I didn't know him when he used to dislocate his shoulder playing rugby and snowboarding and whatever. And I'd just finished playing rugby, where the mentality was, well, take a hard pill and just toughen up, princess. Like, we're doing this human flag thing. Like, that was because I didn't understand. If I knew what that was like, I would have said to him, well, let's shut this down, because we don't want to dislocate your shoulder, because we're in amongst a cycle to take some Paralympic athletes to Rio in 2016, and if you've dislocated your shoulder, you're not going to be an effective coach in the gym environment. So luckily, I didn't know him, so I just said, yeah, let's go for it. And we managed to break it down and figure it out ourselves.
And I was stupid enough to try.
That's called peer pressure, is what that's called.
I like that approach. It's so practical. If you break it down, it's not just as simple as, here it is, just do it kind of thing. I guess maybe Nike had it wrong, rather than just do it. Kind of like, well, figure out the pieces and then work on it one piece at a time. But I guess that's not the best slogan for an athletic.
It's not as catchy, yeah. Break it down, figure it out, and then build it back up, and then just do it.
So let's try that on for size. So let's say I'm coming to you guys. I'm new to calisthenics, but I have history of sport or weight training in my background, but I want to learn calisthenics and I'm kind of beginner. How would you start to break things down for someone like me?
I would just want to start off, because I had someone this week on Instagram ask, he was like, I'm a beginner, like I want to get started. And it was like, okay, you're just to get this, just the context of someone says, you know, I want to learn calisthenics. It's this new word. It's a little bit buzz. It's a little bit sexy. And I go, you know, we get beginners coming in and they are beginners because they've literally maybe done a little bit of work on a treadmill and a few cardio machines. And that's what their training background was. They've never done push-ups. They've never done pull-ups. And that to me is a genuine beginner. Whereas this guy I was talking to said, what's your training? What's your training background? You know, can you do a pull-up? Where are you at with your sort of basic body weight strength? And he's like, oh, well, yeah, I used to do bouldering, really enjoyed that. I can do like 10 pull-ups quite comfortably. And I'm going, okay, well, you might not have done what you deem calisthenics before, but if you're doing pull-ups, you're doing body weight training, you're doing calisthenics, you just haven't tried to turn that pull-up into a muscle-up yet. So we're all beginners, but we begin at different points. And I think that's just useful for people to understand when they are getting started, because you and your mate could start together, and one of you is probably going to you're going to learn things quicker than the other potentially, based on the fact that you haven't done calisthenics before, but maybe you actually sort of have done based on what you may or may not have been doing.
Yeah, I think part of the process is then giving people enough to get excited about. Like it's one of those things of going, well, if someone comes a beginner, you can go, well, you can't do anything in calisthenics until you can do 10 push-ups, 10 dips, and 20 push-ups. So go away and do those, and then we can start getting started on a handstand and a human flag or whatever else. And for sure, that basic foundation strength is super important. But those things might take time. And our philosophy is that you don't have to wait until you can hit some magic numbers, which means you then can progress to just a beginning to start to train for a flag, for example. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it requires a lot of strength and foundations, but you can get people into progressions that feel like they're doing the flag. And the biggest thing about that for us is play. It'll feel like they're moving in a new way. They'll have fun doing something which they haven't done before in a movement challenge. And they start to get the buzz of calisthenics without sort of being intimidated by, I've got this huge amount of strength I'm going to need to build. And we get people that come to a workshop and it might be a 40 or 50-year-old lady, and she comes to a beginner's workshop and she can't do a pull-up, but we're able to give her a taste of a number of different movements, and she leaves absolutely buzzing, thinking, this is it. I'm going to go and learn to do a handstand, or I want to try and learn a back lever. And we look at them going, yeah, that's awesome. You just need to understand that's going to be a process over a period of time. And as Jacko said, it could be 1 year for some people. It might be 5 years for another one. But we want to give people that opportunity to explore what they can do with their bodies, to have fun with it, to really sort of invigorate their sense of play in a workout, and feel like some of this stuff is achievable. And that's where our strapline of redefining impossible comes from. Is it's going to feel impossible, but if you follow that process and you stay in the game for long enough, sooner or later you will be able to do that thing that you want to do, and that is a sort of like a massively defining moment in people's lives.
Yeah, and it will change that, and it will change when you do your first, when you redefine your first impossible. We always say this, it changes your mindset, not just for your training of like your next training goal, because you'll go, okay, what else can I do? But you can take that into other areas of your life as well and go like, what other things outside of my training that I currently think, well, I could never do that. It might be at work, it might be family, whatever. And you can start to then apply this mindset that you're training when you're training, but you can actually then take that into like, so, you know, for us, it transcends outside of just training and just calisthenics. It can have an impact if you explore it and allow it to on, I guess, all areas of your life. And just the one thing for me on just that importance of that play, and what Tim was saying about not having to wait until you can do X number of pull-ups, because you might be able to do 10 pull-ups and I can do 10 pull-ups, but my pull-ups or your pull-ups might look very, very different in terms of the speed, the quality, the height, everything about it. So numbers are arbitrary. It doesn't give us any sort of quality or context of how we're doing. But when we're working towards some of these like more exciting movements, they help with motivation. They help with us actually then training and being consistent and giving ourselves a goal. So sort of naturally when we're working through, I guess, our framework of how we like to deliver, coach and explain calisthenics, it allows that to naturally happen. We naturally have a goal and we've got things we're working towards. So, you know, it helps us stay consistent, you know, regardless of what it is you're going to train for. If you're not consistent with it and you're not motivated, you don't enjoy it, you're not going to keep doing it. So it doesn't matter whether the thing you're doing is right or wrong. So that's a big thing for us.
Yeah, I love so many points that you've touched on right there about starting where you are. And, the progress is going to take as long as it takes. But one of the messages that I love about everything that you guys are doing is about helping people transcend what they think is possible. Because so many times we come into fitness, or we perceive life or our own bodies and our abilities as like this fixed and stuck situation. Like, this is the kind of person I am. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do. And it's very fixed. And your entire approach is about saying, well, here's where you may be with this current level of ability and stuff, but we can redefine what is actually possible through a realistic and practical approach to training. And that helps break down those barriers and those walls that leave people thinking, well, I can't do this, and be like, well, I can improve though. I can get stronger. And it's that feeling of progression that just lights people right up, and it makes them grow and improve, and they transcend beyond those barriers they thought. And that's everything about your approaches, which is one of the things I love about it, because there's so much you can or you can't, or right or wrong within training these days. And you just go right through all of that into discovering people's true potential.
Yeah, and we're living proof of that. I mean, if somebody looks at me now and what I can do, like my handstand push-ups are pretty good, and I'm trying to be humble, but I've got a certain level of competency in things that I can do.
I'll say it for him. They're very good. Your planche is also good.
That I would, if someone said to me, sort of with someone with no gymnastics background, 2 shoulder reconstructions, I actually don't know how many times I dislocated my shoulder. It was that bad. Could somebody with that medical history do what I can do now? Like, a lot of people would say, well, no, that's probably not going to be for you, Tim. But so we're constantly on this journey of sort of redefining our own impossible. When I first started, I would never have thought that we'd get to the level that we've got to. We've still got a long way to go. We've self-confessed we are not the best people at calisthenics in the world, but we pride ourselves on trying to be the best coaches of it, because we have an understanding of the process from our own experience, having never had context of gymnastics or anything growing up. And also coming to it as relative beginners, even though we had some level of strength training background before. So it's amazing for us to hear that you feel that as part of your engagement with us, because that's definitely what we want to communicate to the outside world, and to people who are sort of engaging with our content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah. Just touching on what you said about how people will often come in. I can picture a few people that had come to some of our first ever workshops. I'm to give a shout out to Helene. I remember literally her face, and she's going, "I'll never be able to do this," and I'm thinking, well, that's more of a self-protection mechanism or self-talk. That, because if you didn't think you could actually do this, you wouldn't be engaging. You wouldn't have come to the workshop. So you're saying it to try and self-protect you. It's a mindset thing. And you actually do believe you could do it. And that's why you're coming, and that's why you're asking for us. That's why, that's why you're listening to this podcast right now, or you're searching on Instagram for little bits of help and whatnot. You do believe. And what people need is, they just need that little bit of encouragement sometimes to go, okay, it might feel impossible now. And I'm with you. Like, it felt impossible to us, but you must think that it's possible, because you wouldn't be engaging in this otherwise. And therefore, just giving them, and then that's like the step change. It's got to happen in the mind first, and then after that, it's like, okay, here's the progression or the regression of the exercise to meet you physically where you're at. Then let's apply this mindset that you are going to redefine your impossible. Remember that thing you couldn't do 2 weeks ago, and we've taught you, and you can do it now. Okay, yeah, I remember that. And then, right, so it's just we're going to take little baby steps all along the way. It's a pleasure for us as coaches to have to be part of that journey with people. It's amazing we get to set what we love. One of the things we love most is getting to celebrate, whether it's like the end success of like what we call like a graduation, once someone's learned how to do like the full thing, whatever it may be that their goal was, or just just those little steps along the way. Sometimes someone taking one knee off on a frog stand, for example, they are like absolutely blazing with joy, because they're like, that felt. Like they can, it's still so raw how impossible that felt. And it's probably fair to, or it feels like in other forms of training, you just don't quite get that same like radical change of, yes, you can do PBs of things you've never done before from a fitness perspective, of like the time you do a marathon or lifting on a bench press PB or something like that. But it's still just like a little bit more weight or a little faster time compared to what you did before, as opposed to this whole thing. Like I can remember when I couldn't do a handstand, and now I can do one. Like it's a big shift. And I think that mentally for us is invaluable.
Yeah, it's one of the things I find, especially as I get older, is one of those pure moments of joy, is when you discover that you are capable of just even a little bit more than what you had, to feel a difference from 1 week or 1 month to the next, where you feel yourself changing. I personally, when I've experienced those, I feel like a kid at Christmas with a new toy. Like everything gets upgraded, uploaded, and I'm just ecstatic about what I can do now. And we just want to share that with people as much as possible. So if someone came to you who was more experienced with calisthenics, they're kind of in a bit of a rut and they feel like they've exhausted their potential and they're once again hitting that limitation of what they think is possible, how would you start to break them beyond those walls and no longer a beginner, but at the same time, they feel like they're near the end of their potential?
Yeah, and that's where we sort of lean on our experience from a strength and conditioning background. And it's often a case of looking back at the fundamental principles of how they train. So they might have all the right progressions, but they're lacking potentially how they tweak and design their program. That's the real art side of being a coach, I think, is being able to, yes, we've got all these variables and we know we need to do a certain number of reps and sets, but how we sort of select the exercises and bring those things together. So let's take, for example, that let's take a muscle up. It could be that they've been smashing weighted pull-ups and they're doing loads of strength work. But by actually looking at that person, we find that their underlying stability system is weak. So it's not a matter of how much force they can produce. They're just losing the capability to be able to actually create a stable base around the shoulder. And that therefore they can't apply that force because the base is weak. So rather than going, right, what we need to do is more heavy pull-ups, or we need to do more sets of 10 for 3 or whatever it might be, we might go back to going, right, we're gonna build you a better chassis. So we're gonna go back to basics and we're gonna start to look at stabilization around the joint. We're gonna start to improve endurance around the joint and endurance of shoulder stability. Because if you can create a stronger chassis, we can put more horsepower in that car. And we might have to then go and take a slightly different angle on it. And often sometimes it can be something like that. We might go, we need to switch a training phase. We need to start to move the progression through. But yeah, that's probably our approach, is just to lean on some of our sort of the science of training, rather than saying it's the next progression. It's sometimes we've got to take a slightly different look at it.
I like that a lot. It's to a degree just improving the quality of what they're doing rather than trying to just add onto more progressions and figuring out what's the thing that's kind of not necessarily holding them back, but keeping them at the level that they're at.
Yeah, exactly. And our sort of background is in training athletes to peak sort of once a year, and then often sort of over a 4-year cycle. And when you go into try and improve an athletic performance, you want to look at all the different components that are going to make up that performance, and then understanding where those opportunities lie for us to then go and try and make a significant improvement. So yeah, often it is enhancing rather than changing, but some people just haven't had the opportunity that we've had to build that experience over a number of years of writing so many training programs and trying different things with athletes in the gym. These things work well together, this combination of things works, that doesn't work. That sort of context which you can only get from having skin in the game of being a coach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the process that Tim's talking about there is for you, if we embrace it as the person, it's a self-learning process that you've, rather than getting frustrated when you've hit a bit of a plateau or you don't feel like you're making movements forward in whatever it is that you're trying to do, that you look at it and you try and break it down and you go, okay, where, maybe you work with a coach to help you with that, but we'd love to help everybody, but or you look just looking at yourself and going, where are my limitations? And it's try and take a little bit of a scientific eye on it is what Tim will do. And the reason, just trying to do more and more and more of the same, if it's not working, then we need to think about a different approach to it.
The easiest answer is, what do you not like doing in the gym?
Yeah.
If you don't like doing it, chances are you're not very good at it, and therefore that's probably a good thing to work on.
Mm-hmm. It's a cycle. Like, I don't like doing it, therefore I don't do it very much. Therefore I don't get good at it. Therefore I don't like doing it. And it just keeps going. But you can reverse the cycle through just a little bit of practice and getting a deeper understanding of the technique, which is where you guys come in. You got your blogs, you got your podcast. Start telling everybody, where can they find more information about what you do? I mean, you're all over the place, but what specifically can we link you up with?
Schoolofcalisthenics.com is the website, and from there you'll find the blogs, you'll find the podcast. The podcast is available on all podcast platforms. If you just search School of Calisthenics, pretty much anywhere. You're going to find us. So on YouTube, it's School of Calisthenics.
We're not on TikTok yet.
Instagram, Facebook. We're not on Snapchat or TikTok. No, not. We're too old. We don't have time. The blog, podcast, YouTube are great places, and then all of our classes and workshops you can book on the website. But if people are listening from all over the world, potentially our online training programs and courses that people are following are inside what we call the virtual classroom, which is you'll find that from the website still. That's where we've got everything that we have to date learned and put together to help people, to whether they want to just work on their general basic strength and movement quality and have fun with their training, or whether they're working towards specific movement as goals. We've got training programs as part of everything that's on offer in there, as well as the community of people that are helping support and share and communicate with each other to achieve things, as you sort of said before, Matt, that they probably don't quite think are possible. But that's one of the things that we've noticed as well, is that community that has been generated, that's powerful beyond. And that's again, the whole thing is organic, but the community particularly, and the people out there. So those that are listening, we've not really ever done this before, but it's big love to all of you out there. Just, I'm getting a bit sentimental, but because they do so much, and they say thank you to us, but really it's the other way around. Like, they're the ones that are driving this thing, and they're the ones that keep us going ourselves and inspire us just as much as they're inspiring each other.
It's fantastic what you guys are building. The whole concept, the name, I mean, School of Calisthenics, like, this is something to learn. This is not something that, I think it's like running. Like, a lot of people think, well, if I'm just going to get in shape, I'll just go do it. And that's the end of it. And more work will produce more results. And that may be the case for a short period of time, but ultimately, this is something to learn. It's something to always be educating yourself with. And you guys are just one of the best resources on the internet for helping people do that. And I can't thank you enough. I've learned a ton from you guys. And with folks listening, I highly encourage you to check out the website. Podcast is fantastic. The YouTube videos are very informative. So last couple minutes here, best piece of advice that you would give to your younger self about training, calisthenics, anything. Tim, go.
Oh, wow. That's a question.
That's a great question. One of the greats.
If I was to put it in with the calisthenics, I think I was guilty when I first started of trying to spin too many plates, and I was trying to do too much, and I got very bogged down in learning skills, but didn't dedicate enough time to just getting stronger. So everything that I want to do now is limited by how strong I am, and it takes time to get strong. And I wish I would prioritize more basic foundation strength work from the beginning, rather than sort of being a little bit like a child in a sweet shop of having a go on everything, rather than really sort of narrowing myself down to some specifics and just becoming like, there's no substitute for strength in calisthenics. You can learn skills, but like, you're often going to find that you're just not strong enough, and I should have got stronger earlier.
Good. Very good. I second that one too.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you got?
I'm going to say there's Coach Georgie. I'll give a shout out to her. She's joined our coaching team recently. She's a fantastic coach. And she said something recently on a YouTube video at the beginning and of her advice of, she said, if it feels good, it's good. And if it feels bad, it's bad. And something that it sounds very simple, but it really hit home for me, because something that I've, I guess, been cultured through my rugby career. I could count on one hand probably how many games I played. 316 games of rugby, professional rugby, and you could probably count on one hand how many of those that I didn't have some sort of injury. But the culture, not the culture, it's just the reality of the sport was that you work around them and you deal with them. And it wasn't necessarily about being kind to your body and listening to your body. It was actually about getting a result at the weekend. And it's taken me 6 years since I finished pro rugby. It's taken me that long to get to a place where I think I'm doing that a bit better, of actually listening to my body, and that message from Georgie sort of rings through my ears at the moment. And that's definitely helping me. And if I'd done that earlier, rather than trying to push something that doesn't feel right, doesn't mean it's impossible and I'm not going to be able to do it, but it just means that day or that week or that month or maybe that year, whatever it is like, that's just not right for now. Give your body what it needs. That's not to say because Tim gave some great advice before when he said, if you're really bad at something, then that's probably the thing you need to do. It's finding that difference between, just because I'm bad at it doesn't mean it's more like when something feels really bad or it's painful or it doesn't, it's all.
Love it, guys. Thank you so much. I'm learning a lot here. I really appreciate you taking the time. Again, everybody, School of Calisthenics, check them out. YouTube, podcast is fantastic. Website, get their programs, check out everything they've got. And thank you so much again, folks. I will talk to you guys next time. And for those listening, please, as always, leave reviews, share what you like, share the podcast. I'll talk to you next week. Till then, be fit, live free.